Tubers, I am back today with the science of money, honey. Let's get started with this party. We are just starting chapter 3. Let's see. I don't know if we're going to get all the way through chapter 3 today, but if not, it'll be in my playlist, and I'll put them in the format needed as we proceed along going forward. All right. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the channel. I appreciate you being here. Make sure you subscribe. And if you find it insightful, kindly hit the like button, please, and thank you. All right, so just briefly, I'm going to touch briefly on the first 2 chapters, and then I want to dive in. The first chapter, we talked about what money is. The second chapter, we talked about the myths of money. Now we're going to talk about the science of spending. That sounds like it translates to consumerism to me. Consumerism. Now, we already learned in chapter 32, Warren Buffett and how he spent most of his money investing anything extra and not consuming. All right. The science of spending, and we're going to start off with Dan. Okay. Welcome, love tubers. As we begin to outline the specifics of the science of money, let's begin with what everyone does. Whether they are poor, lower, middle class, or rich, everyone spends. There are many people who never save, never invest, and some rare who never incur debt, but everyone spends. But there is a science to spending that is consistent with wealth and spending that is consistent with lack of wealth. Brian, let's begin by describing most people's experience with spending, which often involves spending on what they want when they want it with no strategy or plan. That sounds like impulse buying. Can you outline the typical, I'm going to put impulse here. Can you outline the typical day of an average middle class person who feels that they have no money to save and how they spend their money, such as on a daily Starbucks, going to lunch every day, impulse spending on clothes? Contrast this with a person who spends with a plan or strategy. Impulse, strategy. Brian, let's go back to where spending comes from. We are all creatures of habit. 95% of what we do is habitual. We do it regularly, and we do it automatically without thinking. When you're a child, your parents reward you with an allowance. It's a small allowance for doing or not doing something. I can still remember my father suggesting that I save 10% of my meager little allowance when I was 5 or 6 years old. That to me was outrageous. I wanted to spend the money, and I wanted to spend it on candy. And so I would take my allowance and go to the store with my mother, and I would buy candy. Some of y'all are adults buying a whole lot of candy, including me sometimes. So what I did at a very young age was, except the candy got more expensive, the candy became cars, houses, phones, internet, women, the club, the strip club. Oh, honey, he talking. So what I did at a very young age was to associate getting money with candy, with having fun, with enjoyment, with pleasure. Spending money makes us happy. Yes, it does. It does. As we get older, we have the same feeling. When we get money, the first thing we think of is, what can I buy with this money? How can I spend it to make me happy? That's why if you go to a tourist resort, you'll find it's full of trinkets and trash. Trinkets and trash, Brian. Okay. Streets lined with stores selling every trash, completely useless things. They sell it to people who are on vacation, and part of the vacation is to go up and down the street buying trinkets and trash. If you ask a person what would you do? What they would, let me cross out they. Y'all need an editor. If you ask a person what would you do if they won the lottery, the first thing they talk about is what they're going to buy. Buy, not invest. You have to change your thinking about spending. And instead of thinking, if I get money, I'm going to make myself happy by spending it, you have to think, if I get money, I'm going to make myself happy by saving it. Ooh, I'm going to put a little heart there. What do most people do when they get money? I was in a restaurant the other day. The restaurant was jammed, which I couldn't understand because it was a Wednesday night. Well, it was payday, and the restaurant was full of people spending their money because their paychecks just hit their bank accounts that day. And they're out at expensive restaurants spending with both hands. That is because of the association between getting money and spending it. And what happens is we put less and less thought into it. So much spending now is impulse spending. An enormous number of purchases happen when people buy unthinkably. This is why stores are designed to have impulse purchases at the cash register, stuff that you don't need or really need or want displayed seductively at the end of each aisle. Dan. What is the difference between good spending and bad spending? For example, good spending is on things that appreciate in value, things that you can easily afford, things that can ultimately help you to produce more wealth in the long run, and bad spending is the opposite. He listed several things, so hold on. One, put a one there, appreciate in value. Two, easily afford. Three, in case you're taking notes, help you produce more wealth in the long run. Let's just put a little star here. We're going to put a big star here. All right. Brian, time and money can be spent or invested. If you spend it, it's gone forever. If you invest it, you get a return on it. That is what people don't understand. The more time you invest in improving yourself and earning ability early in your career, the more money you earn. And the more of that money that you keep, the more of it grows. Compound interest. That's what I'm going to write right there. There's a law of conservation in money. It says it's not how much you make, but how much you keep that determines your financial future. Good spending is where you get a return on your investment. You preserve it, you save it. Bad spending is where the money is gone forever and you can never recover it. Dan. The entrepreneur Jim Rohn, I don't know who that is, so I'm going to need to look it up and put a question mark, had a philosophy for wealth that can paraphrase like this. Do what you have to do as quickly as you can so you can do what you want to do as long as you can. In other words, I'm going to drink some of my, excuse me, y'all. Welcome, Love Tubers. Discipline yourself to do the things that might seem difficult in the short run so that in the long run you can live the life you want. I'm doing some difficult things right now. All right. Describe how to relate this idea to spending. The idea is that during the early part of your life, your spending is done in a thrifty and strategic way. Then for the vast majority of your life, you will have the wealth to spend as you want. Whereas, if you never discipline yourself in spending early in your life, you might struggle with spending everything you earned for the rest of your life. I'm going to call this the pawn shop concept. Pawn shop concept. And yard sales. Yard sales. And Craigslist. Craigslist. That's the concept I'm going to call this. Brian. Rich DeVos, one of the founders of Amway. Oh, my folks used to work for Amway. I didn't know that. Used to say something similar. You do a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do. Get up in the morning, work hard all day, study in the evenings, upgrade your skills. The early bird gets the worm. Get up in the morning, work hard all day, study in the evenings, upgrade your skills. You do these things for a long time so that you can do all the things that you want to do for the rest of your life. Many people try to have their cake and eat it too. I wasn't even wanting no cake until I read that. They want to have fun all the time. You have all these people saying work should be fun and life should be fun. Dennis Watley with one S. The writer and speaker had this wonderful line. He said that most people spend their lives on things that are tension relieving rather than on things that are goal achieving. You know, my Sherpa says that also. She says they pay for either pleasure or something that will help them heal, either or. Okay, Albert Gray. Another thinker who spent more than 12 years trying to find the secret of success finally found it. It is very simple. He said, successful people make a habit of doing what unsuccessful people don't like to do. This needs to be in quotes. Quotes. What it is that unsuccessful people don't like to do? That's a good question. Well, it's the same thing that successful people don't like to do. They don't like to get up early, get started, plan their day, work hard, upgrade their skills, but they do it because they realize that it is the price of success. If you don't pay it, if you don't sow, you don't reap. If you don't pay the price of success, then you will never have it. There's a great tragedy called hesitation, where people mean to do something. Sean Killowitz was talking about this the other day, who owned the KDP business. There's a great tragedy called hesitation, where people mean to do something. They're always going to, but they hesitate and procrastinate. They never do anything. The first poem in my very first book I wrote, called Love Funk, was a poem about procrastination. And here I am later at almost 100 books. All right. In my program, between books and journals. In my program, Making a Lot of Money, I ask, why is it that people don't make a lot of money if it's possible for everyone to retire financially independent? That sounds like a delicious program. Let me put a $sign here. Number one, it never occurs to them that they could make a lot of money because they've never grown up with anybody who is financially independent. Oh my. They associate with people who spend everything that they earn. They think this is the way of the world is. They go with the crowd, the herd instinct. I call them the sleepwalkers. They're not woke yet. The second thing is, if it does occur to them, they put it off. They say, well, yes, I could be financially successful, but not now. I'll start in a week, a month, or a year. The third thing that holds them back is fear of failure. Ooh-wee. What if I save my money and I lose it or it doesn't work out? You avoid that by investing in your money very carefully. 1, investing with experts. 2, never trying to make a big kill or a big score. 3, always gets lots of information. 4. Sadly, another reason is that many people have this fear: if I set a goal of being financially successful, I'll be criticized by my friends. You know what else my Sherpa told me? She said, once you get to where you want to be, if you want to, once you get there, you can have a whole new crew of friends. That's what she said. The answer for this is don't tell them anything. Just keep your plans and your goals to yourself. Finally, get started. Do the first thing that you need to do. Open up a private bank account. Open up a financial freedom account. And put every spare penny you can into this account as long as you can. The most remarkable things happen. Well, I know about it, but I don't think I have ever heard of a financial freedom account. Let me write that down over here. Financial freedom account. We know that spending becomes automatic. How do you stop spending? The first thing is you start to keep track of your spending. If you go for debt consolidation treatment, the first thing they have you do is to sit down and make a list of every single expenditure down to the penny. And you have to write it down. You cannot spend it on a credit card or in cash without writing it down. That is a must. There are some very good apps to help you track your spending. The very fact of taking the time to think through how much you're spending causes you to be more and more conscious of how much you are spending. And it is often it often causes you not to spend. My friend David Bach, author of The Automatic Millionaire, talked about the latte factor. If you spend $5 on a latte each day and then you stop and you save that money, that's $25 a week, $100 a month. Accumulated over time, it could make you wealthy. Another thing that I learned when I started studying self-made millionaires is that they never buy new cars. I was having this discussion with some wealthy people the other day who had learned this in my programs. They buy two-year-old cars, good quality two-year-old cars that are in great shape, checked out by two-year-old cars. Checked out by a mechanic. Let's see, 1, 2, and they drive them forever. Forever. But the cars have lost all their depreciation, so you can buy a $55,000 car probably for $35,000. I had dinner a couple of nights ago with one of the senior marketing executives of Lexus. Ooh. He was saying that Lexus had brought in a recertification program. If you lease the car for 2 years and give it back, Lexus will recertify it with a 5-year warranty and resell it. People could then buy that car and drive it forever. So that's what I do. I will wait till I find a Lexus that's virtually brand new because it's been taken such good care of and then get it recertified. Which means it's been checked out from bumper to bumper, then you just drive it forever and you can save. Let's say you save $10,000 on buying a car. If you invest that $10,000 in property or in a good index fund, over the course of 3, 5, sometimes 10 years that you drive the car, that money can double and triple. Okay. Let me put the little light bulb here. That can turn into a piece of property or a down payment on a piece of property. You may be able to put a down payment on a condo or an apartment and then rent that out. Then the renter pays for all the interest and payments, plus you get a return on your investment. If you start doing that on a regular basis, it becomes quite astonishing. Spending money that continues to grow, investing money that continues to grow, and that's good spending. Bad spending is when the money is gone forever. Property. Dan, which categories might one want to eliminate from one's spending plan if one is serious about building wealth? Brian, well, first, you realize that there are fixed expenses like rent, cars, and so on. So you live in a smaller place. The Warren Buffett model, he lived in a small house when he was starting off, and he still lives there today. If Warren can do it, you can do it as well. Live in a smaller place so you can pay lower rent. It has to do Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law. Expenses rise to meet income. When people have their incomes go up, they move to a bigger place that costs more. And it's bigger, so they buy more furniture, 80% of which they never use. Probably never home to use it. They're probably always at work. Stay in a smaller place and take that additional money and save it. Put it away. Invest it. Remember, only money that is growing and eventually giving you a return is ever going to be of any value to you. I had an experience many years ago, back in the 80s. I was doing a real estate development, a small one. And there was a notice that there was a condominium complex where they were selling off the individual units. You could buy a unit for $1,250, $1,250, and then make monthly payments. I went to look at it. $1,250 was about 30,000 to 35,000 unit. I didn't know anything about investing, but I could come up with $1,250. I think I put it on a credit card. I bought this little apartment, and then I found out that they were renting the apartments in this complex at about $275 a month. Lord have mercy. Well, he is an older gentleman. Rent at $275 a month. I put mine up for rent in the local paper for $250 a month and immediately got a tenant. It was a single. Don't y'all wish we could go back to $275 a month? I've never been there. I've never seen that. But anyway, it was a single woman with 2 young children. She paid me $250 a month, and I was paying $275 or $300 a month in payments. So I lost money for the first 6 months. I got questions. And then I raised her rent, and then I broke even. 6 months later, I raised her rent another $25. He was paying a $25 difference each month for 6 months until he raised her rent. Okay, I got it. It wasn't crystal clear when he charged her $250 for 6 months. He raised it another $25, but it wasn't $50 to accommodate for the past 6 months. Okay, I needed to turn the page. Soon I got it up to the point where she was paying about $350 to $375 a month. All right. She stayed there year after year. She actually stayed there and raised her kids. They went up through school, up through college. She stayed there for 10 years and I regularly raised the rent. At a certain point, I was getting $12.50 net income back on that payment. And remember, my initial investment was only $12.50. When she announced that her children had grown up and finished school and that she was going to move out, I sold the apartment. In retrospect, I think selling there was probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. That condo was paying me $1,000 per year in return on my initial investment of $12.50, 100% return. What if I had bought one apartment like that each year? Ooh. Every time you buy an apartment, the banks will lend you more money to buy more apartments since you demonstrated success in this area. That's the one thing that Warren Buffett did. He bought companies that threw off cash flow, and he took that cash flow to buy more companies that threw off cash flow. It was like a little hose, and then pretty soon, like a fire hose, and now he's generating $25 billion a year. That's $2 billion a month in cash flow. Which he can then use along with more money from the bank. The banks will lend him anything he wants. If I had done the same thing, I would own apartment buildings, but I was too young to even think about it. And with age comes wisdom. Anybody can do that. If you can just find one apartment or condo that's for sale nearby and make sure it's all cleaned up and do a little bit of homework and make a down payment, you can start a real estate empire. This is good. Hello, love tubers, darling. Thanks for tuning in, love. I'm reading The Science of Money, honey. I'm in the middle of chapter 3, The Science of Spending. Dan. That's a great way to spend on something important that can also provide a return. In which categories might one want to consider increasing one's spending if one is serious about building wealth? For example, ongoing education, high quality business equipment to increase efficiency. Brian, it's the Earl Nightingale rule. Invest 3% of your income back into yourself, improving your skills. As soon as I heard it, I began to practice it. And now I say there's no limit on how much you can expend to improve your skills. Some years I was spending thousands of dollars. I took 2-year executive MBA at the university. It cost thousands of dollars, but it was a fantastic investment. I had a gentleman come up to me recently and he said, I came to your seminar about 8 years ago and you taught that 3% rule, invest 3% back in yourself. At the time, he was living at home with his mother. He was making $20,000 a year and had an old car. I said 3% of $20,000 is $600. He bought a couple of audio programs from Nightingale Conant. Put a question mark there. I don't know who that is either. Our old dear friend, and some books, and went to one seminar. That year, his income went from $20,000 to $30,000, and that's a 50% increase, which is what I said would happen. And he said he could directly relate this increase to what he learned in those programs. So now he's making $30,000, and 3% of $30,000 is $900. The next year, he spent $900, and his income went to $50,000. The following year, he spent again $1,500, and his income went to $80,000. He saw that this really worked. He increased it to 5% instead of 3%. And that year, his income almost doubled. So he decided to go all in. In his 5th year, he spent 10% of his income, and his income doubled. And then he did it again. I asked how he was doing now. He said he passed $1 million this year and that he still invests 10% back into himself. I said, 10%, that's $100,000 a year. How on earth do you do that? He said, it's hard. I'm going to put a wow sign there. I used to go to seminars. Now I hire those seminar speakers to come in and spend a day with me coaching. I have special coaches. I have advisors. I travel to international conferences. I have my own learning library with television sets and videos and DVDs and audios and books. Put new life right there. It's hard to spend $100,000, but my income just keeps going up by 10, 20, 30% a year, and those expenses are tax deductible. I'm going to fold this page. It really works. HR Magazine looked up how much, page 78. HR Magazine looked up how much return companies nationwide got back on their investment in training. It ranged anywhere from $22 to $33 per hour that they invested. I spoke to a very wealthy woman just a couple of days ago. She said, I bought one of your audio programs from Nightingale Content 22 years ago. My husband and I listened to it over and over again. We had been married for about 3 or 4 years. We had one child, and we started saying, I like myself. I can earn $1 million a year. I earn $1 million a year. So we started repeating these affirmations, and you know what? Within 5 years, my husband's on Wall Street making $1 million a year. Money mantras. Because of the one audio program, we became rich. I've had people who, from one book, one audio program, one course, one seminar, one coaching program, all increased their income the next year. I have a friend who paid $100,000 to get a personal coach for an entire year and increased their income by $1 million the following year. So the very best investment, the very best expenditure is to spend on yourself. Spend on making yourself better. What if somebody came to you with an investment and said, I'd like you to invest in this? It looks like it's a really good investment. It's got great potential for the future. And you looked at it and said, no, I'm not going to invest in that. I just don't think it has a future. I don't think it's going to be a successful investment. So it would be a waste of my money. How does this apply to investing in yourself? At an unconscious level, people who do not invest in themselves have feeling of undeservingness, self-doubt, lack of belief in themselves. They've made a decision that they're not worth it and that investing in themselves is a waste of money because they have no future. Ooh, you said a lot in that paragraph right there. That's the 411. You can always tell people who have given up on themselves because they don't invest in themselves. Many people would be shocked to hear that, yet it is true. Because here's one of the greatest discoveries of all time. You can only tell what your beliefs are by looking at what you do. Especially what you do when you have a choice. You always choose what is in alignment with your deepest, innermost beliefs and values. So if you're given a choice to buy a latte or buy a CD, if you're given a choice to go on vacation or attend a seminar, and you choose fun, you've chosen the tension relieving activity. You're saying that this is more important to you than your own personal growth and development. Whatever you do repeatedly becomes a habit. Pretty soon you get into the habit of never investing in yourself. And as far as you're concerned, It's automatic. Autopilot. That's what I call that. Autopilot. In fact, if somebody comes to you and says you should get a copy of this book, it is a paperback now, it's only $12, you'll actually get angry with that person for suggesting that you move out of your comfort zone. You'll become angry and resistant. You'll actually be negative toward the person who is suggesting that you invest in yourself. Man, if this isn't mental illness, I don't know what is. Mental illness. Okay. Louise Hay. I don't know who she is either. Circle her. The spiritual author once said that the greatest problem of the human race is the feeling I'm not good enough. It's of no value for me to invest in myself because I'm no good. I'm not good enough. And it won't do any good because I have no future. You can say I've never made that decision. No, but you made it by default. My Sherpa is the High Priestess Witch, honey. That's who suggested this book. Who suggested I read it? Her name is Valerie Love, valerielove.com. Yes. So sinners would not feel worthy enough to invest in themselves. If you're looking at yourself as a sinner. All right, let's keep it moving. That's like saying, I've never made the decision to be unfit. But if you decide not to exercise, you have made that decision to be unfit by default. If you choose not to engage in developing yourself, you made a decision to fail at life, because if you're not working on yourself, you have no future. Another way to think about this is to ask, if you were a stock, would you invest in yourself? Would you buy any? That's a shocker too. Do you think you're a growth stock? Are you a stock that widows and orphans could invest in? Because your value is going up and up. Pardon me, I'm taking notes as I'm reading this with y'all. Many years ago, I got into financial trouble. I was broke and I needed money. A friend of mine, a very smart guy, said, I'll lend you some money if you give me 20% of your profits for the future. My business had no profits at the time. I said, sure, absolutely no problem. He saw that I was a growth stock. So he gave me $10,000 or $20,000, which I needed to save my business. Then I started to make a profit. My profits were $10,000 and then $20,000 and then $30,000, and I'd give him 20%. Eventually, I bought my soul back from him. Oh my. I gave him $40,000 rather than having him carry interest on my income for the indefinite future. That was the smartest 100% return on his money that I had ever given anybody. Think about that. Are you a growth stock? Are you the kind of stock that makes me say, I'll invest in you? I'm going to get rich because you're increasing your value so much. Value. Dan. For entrepreneurs and small business owners, what are some of the biggest spending mistakes that most business owners make? Oh, I need this right here. Yes, honey, with me in the current business that I'm doing. Okay. The number one rule in starting a business is preserve cash. Oh, he preached it. Preserve cash, preserve cash. He says it 3 times. Which means never buy when you can lease. Never lease when you can rent. Never buy. Lease. Oh my. Never rent when you can borrow. Never borrow long term if you can borrow short term. Therefore, you never lease offices, you rent them. Even if you have to move. You buy used furniture. I learned this. That there's used furniture out there for 10 cents on the dollar, and it's fine for now. I remember many years ago, I was asked to set up the distribution of a line of Japanese vehicles for Western Canada. I found some warehouses in an old warehouse district. I bought used furniture. I set up the offices and parts department and everything else. Then my Japanese counterparts came out from Tokyo to take a look at the facilities. The manager walked in and said, "Ah, cheap offices, cheap furniture. I like this. Cheap offices, big profits. We like our distributors to make big profits." He said that he saw distributors all the time who go out and borrow a bunch of money, get brand new offices, pay top dollar for first class new everything. He said that they almost went broke before they made enough profit. Cheap offices, big profit. He said, I never forgot that. It is a very important lesson, and it was learned by many companies that went broke during the dot-com collapse. These people moved into first-class office premises. They bought first-class everything, and then they ran out of cash. First class. Put that over here. What you want to do is preserve cash. Never spend it if you possibly can. Save the money, borrow or rent on short term, even get it from your friends if necessary, but preserve cash because cash is like oxygen to the brain. Cash and oxygen are the same. Equals oxygen. If you have cash, you can survive. If you run out of cash, the business can turn over like a ship in the ocean and sink immediately. A business that's been in business for 100 years can die if it runs out of cash, so preserve cash. That's what I've learned because I've made all the same mistakes. Preserve cash, preserve cash, preserve cash. Dan, to wrap up, are there three key or principles to never forget on this topic of spending? Are we almost done with chapter 3, y'all? Okay, and it's right on time too. If you're just tuning in, hey Love Tubers, thanks for joining me, loves. Brian, write everything down. The most important thing is to create a financial plan and write everything down in detail. Write down what you think things are going to cost. And then double check. Many companies have gone broke because they underestimated the cost of essential furniture, essential raw materials, essential people, essential advertising. They didn't do their due diligence. With me doing grants, this is some important information. I do have a financial business plan, but I might need to look that back over then. Underestimate. So that I don't underestimate. These words, due diligence, have become my favorite words because of the mistakes I've made in the business. People make financial commitments and decisions without getting enough information. That would be correct. I have learned a lot of things along the way financially that I have run into in regards to some of these businesses I didn't started, but I didn't find out about until I actually started being in the business. So that is correct. And I keep saying, well, where did this come from? And I didn't know. And I didn't grow up around people like that. Who knew? I had to find things out on my own. So yeah, you run into a lot of financial things without getting enough information. Do a thorough financial plan. Committing things to paper forces you to think about them very carefully. Creating a budget is something many entrepreneurs hate to do because they are not detail-oriented people. Then find someone else, get an accountant, somebody who loves detail, and then make a list of everything that you're possibly going to need to do your business. And then shop around and double check and pick up the phone and double check and keep your expenses as low as possible. The second thing is to defer big expenditures as long as possible. Big expenditures. If you think you need a whole new computer setup or something like that, put it off for a month, put it off for 2 months. It's no emergency. You'll find that people who sell these things will do everything possible to get you to hurry up. If they're commissioned, they get commission when the check clears. It's no emergency. If both personal and business finance, you'll find that if you wait 30 days to make any kind of decision, you're probably not going to make it at all. We have a tendency to think, oh, that's a great idea. A new car, a new computer, or something else, but you put 30 days in before the decision, and you'll be amazed at how much better your decision is and how rarely you decide to buy it. I decided to buy things and giving myself a 30-day fuse. At that point, I didn't even remember why I'd been interested in buying those things. So give yourself as much time as possible. Thank you, Brian and Dan. The third thing is to get advice from more experienced people, amen, or people who are really careful with money. I had some good friends who are just very, very careful with money. When I ask them about certain expenditures, they have all kinds of great ideas. Don't buy this. Don't buy it here. You can get it cheaper there. You don't really need it. You can borrow here. You can do something else. Man, they listed a whole. Whew. I'm going to repeat that. Don't buy this. Don't buy it here. You can get it cheaper there. You really don't need it. You can borrow here. You can do something else. Sometimes you can lease facilities. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has just become the fourth richest man in the world. I believe didn't he sell Amazon? That's a whole different story. Anyway, he had all this cloud computing capacity for Amazon and actually had an overabundance, so he began to rent it out. Excuse me. Now he rents out cloud computing capacity for thousands, tens of thousands of companies. He's making billions of dollars a year. So if you and I started our own business, we could just go to the Amazon, hook up, buy everything that we need to. Also, Amazon will sell anything for others as well as eBay. So you don't need to have your own store. You don't even need your own website. There are other companies that will set up websites for you. For instance, Google will do that. I haven't worked on my Google certifications in a while. Who did mention a free website? You write that down. They will set up your entire website so that your goods or services can be available to everybody in the world. These are all the ways of putting off expenditures until you absolutely have to make them. It should be at a point where you are so big and the savings are so great from making the expenditure that it will more than pay itself off. This would have been a lovely book for me to have about 5 years ago. That is the end, honey, of chapter 3. And my library time for the room, because I got the room today so I could be able to read to you all. Lovelies. But I will be back Thursday. I will be back on Thursday. Yes, because I got a full day tomorrow. I won't be at the Libby tomorrow. But thank you for tuning in to the Science of Money. I appreciate you joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a lovely Wednesday. And I will see you back on Thursday. All right? Mwah. Take care, loves.